What's up, everybody? It's your pal the Coin Guy coming to you with another non-coin related video. Today I'm going to talk to you about languages because I speak multiple languages, and as an academic you have to deal with lots of languages. Now, what do I mean I'm going to talk about languages today? Well, as I stated, I speak several languages. I speak English, obviously. It's the only language that I speak fluently. I also speak French. Obviously, growing up in Canada, I had to take it for 12 years in school, and then I've just continued to use it off and on. I speak Chinese because I lived in China for 4 years. I can converse in Arabic and Russian, so-so. And I also have a decent understanding of reading a number of languages as well, plus ancient ones, but that's a whole nother category. Why? Some of this is due to my life experience, just the nature of my travels and where I've ended up, and my research. Some of it's just personal interest. I love learning things. I love learning about languages. And some of it's just for funsies, because I can. You know, why not? So one of the things I want to do today is kind of give you guys some hints for learning languages. This is going to be very similar to the video I did on how to get into a PhD and some of these other kind of education videos that I've done. So, a couple things about learning languages. First thing, don't be afraid to be embarrassed. This is, I would argue, my number one tip. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to look silly at times when you're standing there with your dictionary going, ni, lai, zo, na, li, right? That's Chinese for where are you from, by the way. This is just the nature of things. What helped my Chinese, for example, and my Russian as well, was walking into a store with my phone, taking a picture, figuring out that this dish on the menu says chicken, trying to sound it out and sounding stupid the first time, but then after 10 times actually sounding pretty decent. It was walking into a pharmacy in St. Petersburg and trying to explain, ear, hurt, ow, medicine, you, until I eventually, got the right words together and I could say, hey, I have an ear infection, I need drops. Take your time. This leads then into my next piece of advice. Short-term goals and long-term goals. I also spent time as an English teacher, both in China and now I do it online. And one mistake that a lot of people make is they go, I'm going to be fluent in English in a year. You're not. Just being realistic here, you are not. You're always going to be making mistakes. There's a learning curve there. So what I advise for a lot of people is short-term goals, long-term goals. So for example, hey, I want to be able to watch this show for 30 minutes without needing subtitles. That's a nice short-term goal. I want to be able to have a conversation with my coworker. That's a good short-term goal. I want to be able to read The Lord of the Rings in full with no difficulty. That's a long-term goal, trust me, even for a native speaker. Don't set fluency per se as your goal. This is a good way of looking at it, because fluency is also a very abstract term. So if you say, I'm going to be fluent, well, what does that actually mean? Does that mean you can understand everything? Because there's always going to be some things you don't understand. Additionally, something that I often tell people is, and this is going to sound very morose, but you will never have the same level of English as me. Why? Because you didn't grow up in an English-speaking environment, necessarily. There's also, when you start getting to like a C1, C2 level, you start getting cultural stuff. For example, I could say to anyone in Canada, did you see the game last night? And they will know that I'm referring to the hockey game.
Hello, Canada and hockey fans in the United States and Newfoundland.
I can go to any Canadian and say, what do you want from Timmy's? And they know what that means. Tim Hortons, it's a coffee chain, our version of Starbucks, if you don't know it already.
I mean, to this day, you ask any Canadian where they were when Robin Sparkles lost it. Not only can they tell you which Tim Hortons they were in, but what donut they were eating. Me? Wawa, Ontario. Blueberry fritter.
Halifax, Nova Scotia, Walnut Crunch.
Sudbury, Ontario. Honey dip.
Red Deer, Alberta. Chocolate glaze.
Squamish, British Columbia. Crammed a Timbit into a strawberry vanilla and invented the Priestley. Should have been the best day of my life.
These are things that are really important when you're looking at the wider picture. So, be careful with these kind of things when you're thinking about your short-term and long-term goals. With that in mind, I've just mentioned C1 and C2. Now, if you don't know what that means, that is the Common European Framework for languages, or for English specifically. I think I messed up the abbreviation there. That's okay. It goes A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2, and then fluent. So basically C2 is your highest level. Look at government guidelines on languages. So for example, with Chinese, Korean, and Japanese, there's official government tests that can be done to assess your level. For example, I have an HSK 2 in Chinese, Hanyu Shuiping Kaoshe Arduan. So the second level of Chinese. It's not that high, but it's, decent. I can at least use that. So for example, if I go to a Chinese person and I say, oh, I have level 3, they know what that means, usually. Same thing you will see on, for example, government websites. They will say, must have HSK 4. That is a good guideline on where your level's at, and it's also a very good short-term or maybe even long-term goal. And of course, English, we have IELTS, TOEFL. There's a number of different versions you can do. I personally don't like them from an administrative point of view, but if you were looking for a way to assess your language, it's not bad. It's not bad.
The other advantage is if you pick a language that has kind of a standardized test, you'll more likely have more access to classes. There'll be more YouTube channels and stuff like that you can rely on. But additionally, they always have some form of standardized test prep booklet. So it's a little bit easier to follow along for what you want, as opposed to, say, something like Georgian or Mongolian, or maybe a language that isn't as well known.
I would like to buy a hamburger.
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 The burger.
My last piece of advice is look at language families. So when you're looking at what language you want to learn, for example, if you are a native speaker of English, Dutch, German, French, apparently Bassa are some of the easiest ones to learn. I say easiest, not meaning easy, but relative to others. Same thing, if you're a French speaker, Italian, Spanish, Romanian, Portuguese, they're all Romance languages, so they're going to be easier for you to learn. If you're an Arabic speaker, something like Turkish or Persian. If you're a Chinese speaker, that one's a little more tricky, but Japanese and Korean will be easy for you because there's certain aspects that are the same. These are things to think of on your language journey. So for me as an English speaker, here in the Netherlands, I understand a decent portion of Dutch without any formal training. Same thing when I look at something in Korean and Japanese, I will understand bits and pieces of it because some of the words are the same, or some of the characters are the same, and some of the grammar is the same. If you're someone like me that does Islamic archaeology and you've studied Arabic, you will find Turkish and Persian easier. Keyword there, easier, not easy. All three are fairly difficult. These are things to keep in mind and to make your life a little bit easier. So, to conclude, government tests and guidelines can be quite helpful. Language families, really look at how languages are connected. Short and long-term goals. right? Get on that Duolingo and say, hey, I'm going to spend a day on French, 5 minutes a day. You can do it. It's not bad. And don't be afraid to be embarrassed. I'm old enough to remember traveling and having like a pocket dictionary. Do I have one here? No, I don't. And literally standing there with my dictionary trying to figure out what I'm trying to say in the middle of nowhere in Georgia. I looked like an idiot. But I got by. Same thing in China. That was what got me through, was being aware that I could be embarrassed and still look pretty normal. So there you have it. My recommendations for you. So enjoy. I hope you guys learn and love learning languages the way I do. If not, that's okay too. To each his own. If you have any comments or questions or your own suggestions, leave a comment, send me a message. Love to hear what you think. That's all for now. Bye-bye.